All right. Now I'm going to hand it over to Tim to get us started. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Kenny. My name is Tim Taylor. I'm the marketing director at Gtechna. And we're pleased to be teaming up with the International Parking Mobility Institute to present this learning lab. Insights on how Galveston established a precedent in Texas state laws by implementing ticket by mail. So just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Throughout the duration of the learning lab, you'll be on mute, but we do encourage you to send us questions through your questions pane. Please indicate what slide you had a question about and to whom it is directed. We have our team on hand, including Gtechna's senior sales engineer, Jason Casimir, to field questions, and we'll do our best to address as many questions as possible. Those we can't get to during the broadcast, we'll follow up by email. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our two speakers. Butch Stroud retired from Galveston Police Department, GPD, in 2010 after 20 years on active duty. Now a reserve officer, Butch is the GPD's Director of Support Services with over 31 years in law enforcement, a Master Peace Officer certification, and Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Certified Instructor. Appointed Galveston City Marshal in 2019, he leads code enforcement, parking programs, taxi and record regulation, and other law enforcement tasks, continuing his commitment to community service. Representing Gtechna is Lucy Uvasicova, our Enforcement Solutions Advisor. Lucy will be on hand to provide the fundamentals from a technology point of view to run a successful parking program with the help of enforcement automation. Lucy started her career in the customer service industry, responsible for developing customer service team members. Lucy's trained representatives, managers, and customers for almost 15 years, and in that time, recognized the importance of providing relevant and honest information to her clients. She continues practicing this mindset as a solutions advisor for the West Coast, North America, and Lucy's been part of the Harris family, Gtechna's parent company, for 9 years, and has been in her current role at Gtechna for 4 years. Butch, welcome, and the audience is all yours.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and listening to this. I think you're going to get some valuable information on what I've got to talk about. I work for the City of Galveston. I'm the City Marshal, and part of the responsibilities under my umbrella is parking enforcement at the curb for the City of Galveston. Galveston is a tourist city. However, we have a large cruise terminal as well, number 4 in the nation. So on the weekends, if the weather's good, we can have twice as many people as we have during the week. We have millions of visitors per year to this island, either cruising or working or enjoying our beaches. So some of the duties that we have here is, like I said, parking enforcement. Seawall Boulevard is the main roadway that runs along the Gulf of Mexico, which is our beach. Extremely congested on the weekends, and a main attraction for visitors. Medical center, we have University of Texas Medical Branch here, and it draws a lot of people as well, workers, unfortunately they're visitors or patients. And then our downtown shopping area, which is small businesses, mom and pop type businesses, that is a huge attraction for our tourists. The technology that the City of Galveston uses currently is automatic license plate readers, which, for those who aren't familiar with, they scan the license plate. We have the software on a laptop in our units that determines if the vehicle is paid or not. And if it hasn't paid, then an alarm goes off that says that vehicle is subject to being cited. And we currently stop and issue the citation on spot. So for traditional parking enforcement challenges, for us, the big thing was officer safety. Officer safety is paramount against everything. So as you can see this photo, that's a typical weekend for Seawall Boulevard. And it's a lot of traffic. It moves slowly, but it's moving. Currently, the way we were having to do it was stop in the lane of traffic if we couldn't find a place to pull off, and issue a citation and put it on the windshield. That caused problems for two reasons. One reason is we had to stop in the lane of traffic, which caused the traffic to back up. The next was a officer was having to get out of his vehicle in a moving lane of traffic and get out and put the paper on the windshield. The next issue is confrontations with the owners. Believe it or not, people in Galveston hate to get tickets, and they get very abusive verbally. We've had some actually physical confrontations we have to deal with. So for us, we needed a solution where we could eliminate the traffic congestion and inconvenience the other vehicles driving on the road, and eliminate these confrontations of putting our officers in jeopardy. So our solution's ticket by mail. And ticket by mail has a lot of advantages to it, as we're seeing as we're moving along. The officer safety issues is paramount for us. We want all of our employees to be safe as we can, and we want to make the traffic flow as smooth as we can. And the confrontation is a huge thing. We don't want anybody to get hurt. Some of those people that consume alcohol while they're on the beach, and then we write the ticket, and then they're irate about it. So the next slide. So here are some of the hurdles that we had to come across or jump through and to get to where we are today. Some legal challenges. That's with the legislation made some changes that needed some interpretation. So they stopped the entire process. We started this endeavor 3 years ago. Before we could get our application up and running with DMV, they stopped it, waiting on these legislative clarities of implementing ticket by mail. DMV, the application was where the problem was. It was the wording. So we had to fill out a new application and start the process again about a year ago, a little over a year ago now. And it gets quite complex. So for any of those that want to pursue it, don't let that hinder your vision, because it's a necessity. In addition to that, we had to make some changes to our ordinances to come in compliance where we could implement this program. And at times it feels like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and you're not making a lot of headway, but stay focused, keep your vision where you want it to be, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So with what we've done here, I can assure you anybody that follows us will have a lot smoother path to get to where we are with the ticket by mail. Next. So from what we have here, like I said, we had a vision of what we wanted, which was officer safety, and we wanted to eliminate the confrontations. And so ticket by mail was where we were looking to go. And that's what we felt was the solution to our problem. Utilizing some of the technology we already had, which was the license plate readers. It means we didn't have to buy that. We already had it. And it was going to help with the flow of traffic. We weren't going to have to stop in the lane of traffic to get out and cause any backup. This here's going to revolutionize our parking in Galveston for curb parking. We have visions to go beyond just ticket by mail, but we're taking baby steps. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves with projects, so we're taking the baby steps as it is. We're starting out with the seawall. That's what we're implementing it now. Once we get this thing fine-tuned and working like a well-oiled machine, then we'll take on more, which will be our downtown area, and then eventually our UTMB Medical Center area. It's going to be the new way of have curb parking in Texas for those that want to use a state-of-the-art technology. So with implementation of ticket by mail by Galveston, it's going to make it easier for anybody in the state of Texas to follow suit. There's some challenges you may have to overcome with your ordinances, to be able to qualify to do this. But I can assure you, everything that we've done in Galveston is paving the way for anybody else in the state of Texas to follow and use state-of-the-art parking enforcement and reduce their officer safety or increase their officer safety and reduce the confrontation with any violators. Next. So as I said, we're looking at expanding this program with adding more zones. The outdated meters, we have kiosks and stuff that we have in our downtown area that aids in the patrons paying. I feel this is going to generate more revenue merely for the fact that you're going to have more visibility of enforcement vehicles, which is going to have people think twice about not paying. And in addition to that, once they get their ticket, it's going to have all of the information that's pertinent to that vehicle at that time and the violation. So the evidence is going to be there. You'll see a slide shortly after this that the evidence is overwhelming. So I believe the people paying is going to be a lot higher than what we have today. The future parking management here in Texas, and I believe everyone is looking for new modern technology for parking management. Parking is not going away. There's parking spaces in a lot of your municipalities is very limited, especially your curb parking, because it doesn't increase. And everybody's looking for the best way to manage it. And I believe we're setting the standard for that. The ticket by mail system is, in my opinion, the best way to manage it. And we have app-based payment systems in place, so they can either use a kiosk or, for those that are tech savvy, use their smartphone. A lot of people that come to Galveston still hold the US dollar near and dear to their heart, and they want to put it in a machine to pay for stuff. They don't want to use plastic. So the kiosks are important to us. So for ticket by mail, you're not having to stop. Like I said, you're just driving down the road. Your ALPR system is collecting data, and it's processing this data and storing the violators in a file. Then you have to go in and physically check that and verify the information to ensure that the data that the camera's collected is exactly the data that's what you're wanting to use to issue a citation, and which makes it it's double checked this way. Here again, with what Galveston PD or Galveston City of Galveston is doing here for parking management is definitely going to pave the way for the future for other municipalities in the state of Texas. I would speculate other states in the United States, but for Texas for sure, we're blazing a trail, if you will, for people to follow for parking management. Next. So here's the takeaways, I guess, I would like for y'all to gather. There are options out here, and ticket by mail is one that we've chosen to use. And we've always looked for new technology to streamline the enforcement. The old saying, work smarter, not harder. It's alive and well in my vision. And I believe that's probably most management's vision. And like I was saying earlier, I expect our revenue to be increased with this by compliance, people paying to park. And then those that don't pay to park, they'll pay after they get the citation, merely for the fact that the evidence is overwhelming. So what we've done here, like I've said in the past, is revolutionizing parking management for curb parking in municipalities. and other municipalities can definitely learn from what we're implementing, what we have implemented, and you can do it in your municipality as well. Next. That's all I have. I hope it was something informative, and I look forward for the questions here in a little bit.
Thanks so much, Butch. It's so great to hear your perspective, and so well said. You have leapfrogged over so many in the industry, and this is the result of a great collaborative partnership. You're a forward thinker for sure. Next slide for me. For this next part, next slide, I'll cover a couple of things. I'll talk about how the current system in Galveston works. Some of the future options that are available, specifically AI LPR, as well as digitizing the curb and its benefits. Let's talk about building a solid foundation. With the addition of LPR, you're increasing efficiency. LPR is a force duplicator and allows you to do more with the same number of resources. Ticket by mail removes traffic congestion. You heard Butch say it. Enforcement vehicles no longer need to find a place to park, especially in those busy, condensed downtown areas. It increases safety for parking enforcement staff, a topic on, I think, just about everyone's list right now. And of course, with better efficiency means increased compliance. And that's really what it's all about. Some of the use cases for ticket by mail, we can start off with Galveston, which definitely painted the picture here for us. Now, Galveston started incrementally by enforcing only the seawall. We're incredibly proud of what Butch is doing over there. He's seeing the benefits for his team, but as well as the citizens in putting this in place. And like Butch, you can start with ticket by mail by doing a specific zone or even a specific violation type. It helps you ease into it without actually having to go all in right away. Some of the other use cases include street cleaning, residential zones, so maybe in permit areas that are enforced overnight. Ticket by mail can be in place of stepping outside in the more dangerous conditions. And bike lanes. The picture speaks for itself. Putting an officer on the street to issue a ticket in this instance can really put them at risk. And just like Butch, other cities are signing on, and they're also seeing the benefits for their own use cases. Pittsburgh, for example, I think probably on this webinar, are in the implementation process right now, about to go live in maybe about a month or so. For them, they have specific areas where they deploy a police officer with the PEO. It's something a lot of us talk about. Confrontations in those areas can be very risky for the officer. Now, they'll use ticket by mail instead and keep the officers safe. Hollandale, Milwaukee, they're both giving this a serious look. This is just the beginning of ticket by mail, starting off with Galveston. And these are only a few examples that are well tailored for this. Definitely, there are many more. So as the vehicles drive around the city, they capture the events from overtimed or unpaid vehicles. All the occurrences captured in the day get pulled into a web-based back office for a secondary review. This is what that screen looks like. It will show you each capture along with the date, the time, plate information, officer, and the infraction. From here, you can fill in any records that might be incomplete, accept, or reject. Then once all the items have been reviewed, those that have been accepted will be sent off to DMV to collect registered owner information and to be prepared for mailing. Toll systems, they work in the same type of fashion where the person reviewing the information can check to make sure the record is complete, make updates like changing a state of a plate before firing it off in the mail. And a copy of the notice of violation will look like this. Galveston has configured this in their format, which will include a copy of the ticket itself, all to be sent out to the registered owner, with the images of the evidence captured available in our backend, our command center. And everything slated for mail will be made available for analytics. Should you need to see if a ticket has been sent, tracked, completed, you'll see exactly what happened with that notice. The nice thing about is that a secondary USPS lookup ensures the right address receives that notice. The exciting part, the future, leveraging AI LPR to automate enforcement. So Galveston is just starting out with ticket by mail, and as we heard, in the Sewell area only, which is a perfect candidate to start with. With millions of people visiting every year, you can just imagine how busy that seawall gets. Butch knew exactly what he was doing when he decided to do this project. Right now, they're enforcing using the traditional LPR method. In the future, when Butch wants to expand down to the downtown area, we recommend leveraging AI LPR because several things can be enforced compared to the traditional method, which I'll show you in the next couple of slides. Back one, please. So, I mean, it's no secret that with automation comes efficiency. With AI LPR, you'll see a higher number of hits. It captures even the things that we miss with traditional LPR options. More hits drive increased compliance. It's also the best way to collect important data. And as we know, data is key. This information can help in understanding hotspots, areas with a higher number of violations compared to areas with very little enforcement, perhaps. Occupancy data. It can even aid in parking studies. A few examples of automated enforcement. Fire hydrants and yellow curbs, where traditionally an officer needed to capture these events outside of LPR. They needed to physically observe it to ticket it. Now, AI can automatically alert on those instances. So the officer can keep their eyes on the road and let the system take care of alerting when there is a violation. Other infractions include no stopping zones, bus zones, and even school zones. In places where you can't easily jump out and issue a ticket, you can now comfortably capture the event and send through mail. And of course, privacy is of utmost. So with AI, should a human be detected and captured with the evidence, they will automatically be blurred out. How do you automate enforcement? Well, you digitize the curb. Each rule of your enforcement zone gets mapped. And with the help of GPS, we'll identify parkers that are not in compliance with those rules that you've set. In addition to the rules of the curbs, your time limits, fire hydrants, school and bus zones, etc., AI lets you map the signage on your street and the parking rules for that specific spot. On top of that, you can even track your assets. So things like pay stations, kiosks, signs. One client even mapped the trees. Map your construction zones where parking is temporarily unavailable and view all that data in a map view. This here is a map of Toronto, and in this case, they're only showing the pay stations. Using multiple layers, you can map out the rest of your city, whatever you decide to map out. And you can see in the legend here on the bottom left-hand corner that only pay stations are selected to show. The purple polygons that you see, they each represent a mapped asset. And the system can track as you drive through the area. If you're missing a sign, the system can tell you if something's amiss. And access the asset metadata within each polygon to view the details. Just click on one of the polygons and you'll get the information. This is what makes AI LPR just a phenomenal benefit to enforcement teams, as well as other branches of the city. Creation of zones, auditing assets, enforcing the curb. It's all available only with AI LPR. The enforcement efficiency can be brought up to a whole other level. All of it leveraging artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Lucy. Before we jump into the Q&A, there's a little bit of a glitch getting people to join, so we're going to redo the poll. Kenny, did you want to put that up for a minute?
And it's launched, and I'll leave that up for about 30 seconds. Okay, and I'll share those results.
Thanks, Kenny. Did you want to go ahead and begin fielding questions, Jason?
Absolutely. Thank you, Butch. Thank you, Lucy. I'm sure everybody benefited from hearing the Galveston story and some of the leading edge technology that we're utilizing, including AI, of course. So Butch, you're going to have to help me. I'm sure some questions are coming for you and some may come for you, Lucy, as well. So I'd ask everybody, please, if you do have specific questions, there's a little questions and answers, and someone looks like they've already figured out how to use it, but try to fill that section in. It makes it a lot easier for me, especially if I'm going to answer some of them live or give you a textual answer. So let me read the first question that's come up. If you map all on-street regulation signs, and then the ALPR identifies missing signs, is there automatic email alert sent out? I'll answer that. The thing is, the mode where you're going to put the vehicle to collect information, to digitize your curb, it has to be in a specific mode, right? It's not going to enforce and do that at the same time. So generally, you're going to plan when you're going to do this site survey. You're going to put the vehicle in that mode. It's going to essentially scan most likely one side of the street each time, get all the assets, then it'll go to Sensen, and then they'll actually go and do their part and analyze that data and bring it in. So this is more of an independent process. Next question. I guess this is to you, Butch. We won't do it right maybe at this moment if you don't have it, but can you share a link to your legislation, both at state and at a local level, that allows for ticket by mail? And I'm assuming they may require ordinance changes as well, and that might be something that is useful for them. And questions are coming in, so I'm encouraging everybody, please get your questions in so I'll be able to field them and ask our experts we have here today. The other question now is, can LPR AI identify license plates issued to disabled operators versus license plates that are not? And this is not necessarily a simple question. This depends on the regulations for those plates. It depends on the flexibility of the system that is set up. Let's say if you're talking about designated spaces, then we could easily do that. If you're talking about, you have a list of license plates that are consistent and you bring them in the system and we know who's using them, that's a simpler story. If you're talking about someone has a little placard and whenever they go driving around with anybody they know in anybody's car, that's going to be a scenario that's going to be more difficult to enforce. Seems like there's a lot of interest in the ALPR, Lucy, and you said it with that AI stuff, that was the real technological part and people seem to hit on it. And questions keep coming in, so I'm encouraging you, please, to keep them going. How many violations can be reviewed and processed in the back office per FTE? Do reviewers need to be commissioned in Texas? And Butch, maybe you can help me out with this. You know, in terms of, you know, you're gonna have a team of people, and maybe it wasn't fully clear to everybody. They're not reviewing this in the vehicle. They're gonna be reviewing this after the fact using a command center software. Now, and I'm looking for Butch, I guess my screen is a bit small. So maybe you could assist me in this.
Okay.
How many do you think they would maybe go about doing and reviewing? And that question about, do reviewers need to be commissioned in Texas?
Right. This is part of what we had to do with our ordinance. We changed it from a criminal violation to an administrative violation. That allows civilians to issue these citations. So no, you don't have to be commissioned as a peace officer in the state of Texas to issue a parking citation in Galveston. How many can you review? That depends on how busy we are that day. You know, there's going to be some days that on the weekends where there's going to be a lot of vehicles detected. So we don't have a maximum number, that we haven't found a maximum yet. So we don't really know. I don't know that if there is a maximum at this time. However, my parking enforcement deputies, they verify these throughout their shift. That way they're not bombarded with, let's say, 100 of them at the end of their shift. They can utilize this time whenever they're taking a break under a shade tree to review them and approve them throughout their shift to expedite their process.
Good answer, Butch.
That
Go ahead,
actually ties into the question from Moline here. The same officer who drove the LPR unit also reviews and issued the tag. It could be, it depends on what your operations are like. In this case, and in a couple other cases, you know, they have the officer doing the review. In other cases, they have the administrator. And sometimes, you know, we might recommend that the administrator do it because they're focused on making sure those are complete. But again, depends on what your operations are like.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, and I think as it scales, that's why Butch, he understands how this all works. He has a certain amount of staff. He's going to scale it the way the load is right now. And if the load goes up and there needs to be more, he's going to end up getting more staff to have to do that. So I guess you're right, Butch. There's theoretically no limit at that same time. So that's a good point you made. I see another question. I was monitoring more the Q&A specifically, so please try to put in the Q&A, not the chat. Is there a lot of mapping involved?
I might tell you one. Yeah. Okay, you're reading the chat. Go ahead.
Yeah, now I am, but I'm going to try to. But thank you for bringing that to my attention, Lucy. I appreciate that.
No problem.
So is there a lot of mapping involved with AI LPR? You could say yes, but understand that this is a process that's done for the machine learning aspect of it, right? We have a human brain. We can see things and make judgment calls. So as we create these maps, it allows the AI and the technology to do its job much better than we would essentially, right? So there's a heavier mapping phase that's needed at the beginning. This wasn't asked, but I'll throw it in. If you have an existing GIS system and we can utilize a lot of that information, we can bring that in. And oftentimes you could use a combination of the vehicle going out and doing some of the gathering and digitizing the curb, and also using some of the assets that may be mapped in your GIS system at the same time.
I would add to that, Jason, that with the AI vehicle LPR, that vehicle can be used to digitize the curb. So up to now, most cities have to hire a consulting firm with a lot of people on the street taking notes of what's on the street. But now with the AI LPR, you can actually digitize the curb extremely fast at a much lower cost than what most people would think. So that's also a huge game changer. So not complicated at all. It takes, actually there's a lot of, I think with the AI LPR, if somebody purchases the automated, we'll even cover like 50 blocks for free. So it's really a game changer in how to digitize a curb. In the past, that was, pretty costly and a lot of time to take to do that. But now it's completely different. I just wanted to mention that.
No, very good point, Mike. And obviously, if they're taking advantage of the same LPR vehicle, you're not directly getting 2 for 1, but you're leveraging the same thing. And there's some other comments put in the chat, which just gives us some idea of the scale. In Calgary, which does use the Sensen LPR technology, has 11 officers, and they process 600,000 observations a month. And observations are a unique plate. So the technology obviously has capabilities that can be utilized in all contexts, whether you're small, medium, large, and the scale doesn't really matter. And as we just said before, scaling this up to handle the load with ticket by mail is not really a challenge. It's just a question of a staffing type of thing. And I'll go back to the Q&A, and I'm glad that people have been engaged. We're getting some good questions here. And I figured this would come up, Butch. What opposition did you face, if any, to changing the ordinance? How did you overcome that? And in your story, you showed that you had some challenges at the state level, DMV, and then you did have to then go to your ordinance level. So maybe you could comment on that.
Right. I had to go to city council and present my case of what I wanted to do to get their blessings so we can move forward. And as always, you have people from all over parts of the city, and I had oppositions with some of the council persons about ticket by mail. For whatever reason, their constituents didn't want people getting a ticket in the mail or whatever. However, once you present this in a way of it's an officer safety issue, and you're not having to stop in the lane of traffic and cause more gridlock than you already have, the rewards outweighed anything other than it was the best way to go. So it took some finesse talking to convince them this is the best thing to do. But once they realized the magnitude of the officer safety's aspect of it, it's overwhelming, and it was unanimous. They changed their mind on how they wanted to do it. But for us, without city council approval, we get nowhere. They could have said no, and we wouldn't have been able to move forward.
Thank you, Butch. Here's another small question for you, Butch. Is Galveston integrated with state motor vehicles?
Integrated, I'm not sure what they're referring to as integrated. The state of Texas has a Texas Department of Motor Vehicle Division, which the entire state is part of, and that's we're regulated by their rules.
Got it. Thank you, Butch. What type of outreach, Butch, was done to educate the community? You're not being specific here, so I would assume if you know all the way back to maybe even using LPR, and then actually now getting to this revolutionary point where you're going to go to ticket by mail. Like, was there anything you had to do for the community to educate them to potentially try to minimize the initial backlash based on misunderstanding of why you're doing this potentially?
Well, absolutely. The ALPR system has been in place for about 9 years now. And before it started, we went to all the community meetings, used our the local newspaper to get it out there, and social media to get the information out to the public. We still today go to these community meetings and educate the people on how parking enforcement is accomplished. We have a lot of people that move into Galveston, and so they're unfamiliar with the process. So we want education is paramount for us. If they're not educated, they don't know the rules. So our goal is to teach them the rules. The ticket by mail, we had an entire campaign about ticket by mail through social media, through the newspaper, local newspaper, and we're still going through these neighborhood association meetings and talking about this and answering questions about it. The key to implementing anything new is education. You have to educate the people if you expect them to comply with the rules. If they don't know the rules, they don't even know they're violating a rule. So education is paramount. You have to educate them and find multiple ways of doing it, because some people read the newspaper and they're not on social media. Some people are on social media and they don't even look at a piece of paper. So you have to try to reach everyone from all age groups to get the information across.
That's a great answer, Butch. And right along those lines, are you going to use any type of signage or something in those areas where you're going to issue ticket by mail? What's the strategy in that regards beyond the education campaign that you talked about?
At this point, no. We don't have any intentions of issuing a sign saying you're going to get a ticket by mail, as we don't have a signage saying you're going to get a ticket on your windshield. The signage says you have to pay to park. And so one should understand if you don't pay to park, you're subject to being cited for it.
And continuing with that reasoning, if they get cited by mail using this new approach and they don't pay, just someone asked that question, what is the process? What's the solution? How do you end up ultimately getting compliance in those cases?
Well, if someone gets a citation, more times than not, if they're probably not from Galveston, and so they go back home. Maybe they're on vacation, they go back home. Maybe they're from Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Oklahoma. They may even be from Canada. We don't know. So they're going to get the ticket in the mail. And now we had to change. This is part of our ordinance change we had to make, because before they only had 14 days. Well, 14 days is not long enough from the time the violation occurs till you get the ticket to have a reasonable time to appeal it if you want to appeal. So we changed the ordinance to increase the timeline to appeal it. And then our ordinance also said you had to be in person to appeal it. And it's absurd to think someone's going to drive back down here from just Dallas, Texas. I mean, that's only 4.5 hours from here. So we had to change our ordinance to allow to have an appeal through either Zoom or some type of electronic means. And then, so we're trying to make it as easy as we can to appeal it if you feel like you were unjustly issued a citation, but make it fair. And with that, I believe our compliance is going to go up, but that's some of the hurdles we had to overcome just to be fair with the implementation of the ticket by mail.
Good answer, Butch. And people are still asking questions. And Kenny, I'm going to go on until they stop coming in. And obviously, there's been other instances where you've had to cut it short. So we'll do as many as we can up until that point when I hear Kenny's wonderful voice. Thank you, Kenny. Now, there's things around, the legislation. So I guess maybe after this webinar, Jimena and Tim, we could potentially provide some link to the legislation that they have in Galveston. People are seeming that was something that was asked. So I want to take note of that. Someone could write that down. And someone else is asking about with it being a tourist area and dealing with rental cars. They're trying to understand if that causes issues when you're doing a ticket by mail, I guess, and with rental cars.
No, and I'm going to give some information some people may not even know. If you rent a car, let's say from Thrifty or Enterprise or Hertz or whoever, every one of these rental companies have a fund that if someone gets a parking ticket or a toll zone ticket, they pay the ticket. And then they look towards the person that rented it to recoup their funds. That's someone, I just let the cat out of the bag for somebody. But so that's, if you write a ticket to a rental car, there's a really, really good chance you're going to get paid for that ticket.
Wow, that's probably not the answer people expected. Butch pulling out some tips and tricks, which I figured you would. That's a really good one honestly. You know, it means that you're more likely to get paid with a rental car than otherwise. Thank you, Butch. That's quite revealing. In terms of DMV related requests, are these calls, they're wondering if they're automatic or manual? I'm not sure if they're talking about specifically the ones that are in state. Let's assume Texas DMV calls.
Well, for ticket by mail, any vehicle registered in the state of Texas, in the United States, can be searched. There are different fees for different states. So just because you're not from Texas don't mean we're not going to find out who the owner is. We'll find it out. There's a fee adjusted to that, but there is a source of it, and it is automatic. For this process, whenever we verify these violations have occurred and we approve them, the next process is it's sent to Gtechna, and then they submit it automatically in a batch, which is a group, to DMV. DMV is going to, whether it's Texas license plates or out-of-state license plates, they're all going to be researched, and that information for the registered owner will be submitted back to Gtechna. Gtechna then will submit it out to the party that it fills out the citation and mails it off. So, irregardless of what state it is, we'll find the owner.
Well, I'll tell you what, I won't be playing games in Galveston, that's for sure.
I asked Butch if there are any states that are not going to be included in this, and his answer to that was everybody's included.
So no one can be excluded. I know we have a lot of issues with that these days, but Butch is very inclusive. The last question that I have, everybody, and this is a slightly loaded question because you're either going for compliance or you're literally just going for ticket revenue. Now, I'll ask it, Butch. I don't need to precondition questions for you. Roughly what percentage change in volume of citywide ticket issuance do you anticipate as a result of the transition to ticketing by mail?
I believe I'm going to use a common sense approach. At the beginning, it's going to be high. And as this progresses along, compliance will become more. Our ultimate goal is to have 0 citations issued and 100% compliance. If that were the case, then we've accomplished our goal. Reality is that's not going to happen. So at the beginning of the process, you're always going to have more just because there's a learning curve and people don't realize that they're going to be cited. The word will get out. We spread the word as best we can. But if one person gets a parking ticket, they're going to tell 20 people. And those 20 people will tell 20 people, and the word gets fast. So obviously, like I say, the number of citations issued at the beginning is going to be more than what's going to be issued a year from now.
Very good answer, Butch, and very informative as well. And I hope, as a parker, more cities employ this approach, because in the end, if I'm punished for something, it's great. But if I have the chance to comply, and ultimately that's the goal of the city, as a parker, I definitely prefer that method. And I'm seeing questions still popping up. This is a quick one, not specifically related to vehicle LPR, but does Gtechna have a fixed LPR solution that includes automatic DMV lookup and citation letter issuing? Look, the legislation works for either of those solutions, whether it's vehicle, fixed, it doesn't matter. And even you can do it if you're doing it by the handheld and you don't want to physically issue the citation, you could as well do ticket by mail. And Kenny, I will keep going. As I mentioned, people are putting in some interesting questions. So I will keep asking until, as I mentioned, you cut me off. And at least don't cut me off in the middle of a question. So I have this one regardless. Using the AI tech and the increased scanning, any chance that stolen vehicle or bowler alerts will be attached to DMV records to help locate cars as enforcement is scanning? We do have other locations where we do have specific lists that we're checking. So if you scan a plate, there's many things you're able to check at the same time. Whether you want to alert an officer, which is a parking enforcement officer or a police officer, there are ways to deploy some of these messaging mechanisms in a stealth mode. So yes, and people are trying to really bring this together. You're asking some very good questions. And I did mention this is leading edge technology. This is very sophisticated stuff, and there's many pieces to this puzzle to lead you to ticket by mail. And vehicle LPR is not the only path, as some of you just have discovered. It could be fixed LPR as well. Okay, so I answered that one. So as of right now, last call for questions, unless I missed one. If I missed one in the long chat, please try to put it in the Q&A since that list is fairly empty. What happens with vehicles with no plates? Butch, let me ask you that one. You seem to have all the answers for everything. What would you do in the case with a vehicle with no license plate from an enforcement perspective?
From an enforcement perspective, they would contact one of the law enforcement deputies. We would go up there and we would enter the vehicle identification number, and it would be issued that way. It's more time consuming and manpower demanding. However, if you don't use that approach, then people will just take their license plate off when they park so they don't get a ticket. So you have to put in the man hours to outsmart the people.
Which you've done. I thought that might make you stumble a bit, Butch, but that seems to be very difficult to do. And if you want to go to Galveston, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wonderful place. Great area, especially in the summer. But I suggest you pay parking, is what I would basically say. What about vehicles with temp tags or temps license plates, which they're all coming out today, the question.
They actually are picked up by the ALPR system, and they are handled the exact same way as a metal tag.
I think that's great. If there's no other questions, I guess we'll bring in Kenny. And I'd have to say, good questions today, everybody. That really does bring everything together. And I'm sure for those listening, even those who were involved in part of this, we couldn't anticipate those questions. So I do appreciate everybody asking those questions, and it's going to benefit everyone else who ends up watching the video afterwards. So with all that being said, to you, Kenny. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Just before Kenny speaks, I'm just going to chime in and say that we'll be sure to send a copy of the webinar, obviously, and the Galveston case study. And if we can get a hold of some local ordinance and a state ordinance to send as an example, we'll do that too. But thanks to our panelists, Lucy and Butch. It's been a really great conversation. And Jason, thanks for fielding questions. And I'll hand it, thank you to the IPMI, obviously. And I'll hand it over to Kenny.
Thanks, Tim, and thanks everybody for the presentation today. And next time we'll see all of you is at the IPMI conference coming up in a couple weeks. So we'll see you there. Can't wait to see all of you in person at the IPMI conference, and catch Gtechna at booth 810 at the conference as well. They'll be there so you can meet all these great people in person. And yeah, can't wait to see you guys. Hope you have a great week. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. And thank you for joining us for today's Learning Lab. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.